Joseph writes in and says, "Hi Spencer, I've been mostly enjoying the podcast up until the last episode, because in the last episode, you mentioned that you were not a supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement. This is deeply distressing to me, as I believe the movement brings up an extremely important issue in our society. That is, police brutality and institutionalized racism. You say you don't support the methods that they use, but what are they supposed to do? Just lie down and be executed? How would you approach things differently? Thanks for reading, and I look forward to your response, Joseph." Thanks for the question, Joseph. I think it's fair that I should elaborate on what I said in the other episode, but let me just reiterate something. I don't live in America. I live in Canada, and there's a huge difference between how our two systems of policing are run. For example, in this country, we have a fraction of the police shootings that happen in comparison to the United States. And when it comes to our own most incarcerated population, it is not the black population of Canada, but the Aboriginal population of Canada. And that's something this country needs to address. Our relation with our Aboriginal people is an ongoing source of controversy and pain in this country, which could take up an entire episode in and of itself. But let's address your question and criticisms specifically. If I were in charge, the first thing I would do is change the name. That is because they are addressing a very serious issue in our society, police brutality. And police brutality affects everybody, no matter the race. We can all be victims of it, and we should always stand up against police brutality when it presents itself to us. And yes, it's true that police brutality in America is directed at other races disproportionate to their standing numbers within the population. And of course, black people are part of that group which disproportionately is affected by police brutality, but to the same degree, Latinos are also affected by police brutality. So when you call the movement Black Lives Matter, you're automatically creating either a false dichotomy or creating a movement which is automatically exclusionary to people who suffer from the same issues. Black Lives Matter activists, I think, could easily create a broad consensus on police brutality within the United States. Yet when you call the movement Black Lives Matter, I think it makes people reluctant who aren't black to join the movement, who may be affected by the exact same issues that you are. So a Latino person might be hesitant to join a movement about police brutality called Black Lives Matter. However, if we had a more inclusive title, then we could build a far broader coalition of people and get more achieved. So that's one aspect I would change. The next aspect I would change is their methods. That is because their methods of protest are extremely disruptive to average everyday citizens. And that is not a way to gain the hearts and minds of the American population. For example, you'll see the protests at the Mall of America in Michigan, which were extremely disruptive to people who were just at the mall to do shopping. And nothing will lose you the hearts and minds of people faster than disrupting their everyday lives. This was an issue that Occupy Wall Street had as well. For example, they did this huge march, I believe it was in Oakland, and blocked off this highway for quite a period of time, all marching in celebration of the cause. However, if you're just a guy trying to get to work, or a mom trying to take her kids to school, and you're trying to cross this highway and all these protesters are blocking you, how the heck do you think you're gonna feel? Do you think you're gonna win her heart or her mind? I think the answer's a pretty definite no. I remember I had a political science professor in university who changed my entire outlook on how to best protest a cause. I remember he told a story because he used to live in Europe for quite some time. And he told a story about how they conduct protests over there. He told me two stories. One is a story about a strike of toll booth workers in Paris. And the way these guys conducted their protests, I think, is ingenious. They still went to work, yet they refused to take money from people going through the toll booth. They just waved everybody through. So if you're an average French person, who are you going to support in this protest? The people trying to take money out of your pockets, or the average guy who still went to work but just refused to take money from you? He just let you through in a scenario where you would have had to pay anyway. The next is a story about a protest of Italian meat and cheese producers. And what they did here was twofold. First, they started giving away a lot of their meat and dairy products for free to people around the country. Next, they staged a protest where they were able to block off a series of businessmen and executives who were coming to try and quell the crisis. So these protesters blocked them off on the road on a specified area and then brought out the manure tanks and sprayed manure all over these guys, all over their fancy cars, all over their nice suits, and apparently it was quite a spectacle. So, as an average Italian, who are you going to support? The guys giving you free meat and cheese, or the manure-soaked business executives? And while the Black Lives Matter protesters might not be able to give away free meat and cheese and shut down toll booths, there are certainly other things they can do to help the community and win over the hearts and minds of the average American citizen. The last thing I want to say is that when these protesters bring up institutionalized racism, I don't feel they've exactly nailed what the problem is, because a lot of what they claim is institutionalized racism is, to me, easily and more logically explained through other variables besides institutionalized racism. They'll claim institutionalized racism in certain police departments, and while I believe there's probably no question that there are racist cops out there, a lot of these issues they bring up to me seems more like crappy police training rather than institutionalized racism. So to me, it seems like they're jumping to a conclusion unnecessarily. However, I'm happy to see any evidence provided to the contrary. I hope that answered your question, Joseph, and I hope you'll continue to listen to the podcast. Oh, he's done for. There he goes. Nope. I guess Black Lives... Oh. There's a Black Lives Matter joke in there somewhere.